Hi everyone, this is Dr. Cook. This is the flipped lesson for the syllabus for ED 446, which is your student teaching course. So we wanted to take some time to review the key policies and logistics for the course in addition to the key assignments. So I'll start by walking you through and highlighting some of the key ideas in the first couple of pages. And then in the second half of this flipped lesson, I'll talk much more specifically about the assignments for your student teaching course. Keep in mind that I'm not going to read the entire syllabus to you. Our expectation is that you will read the entire syllabus on your own. Anything that's in the syllabus is something that we expect of you, so we expect that you're familiar with it. As I walk through this flip lesson, I'm just going to highlight the key points and the key ideas. So as you know, you over this semester will be doing 16 weeks of student teaching. Some of you are doing this as one placement and some are doing it as two different placements. Regardless, the dates are January 3rd through May 5th. So at this point, you should be a week into your student teaching. In your student teaching, and this is the part that's highlighted right here, the student teachers are required to follow the calendar of the cooperating school district. So if your school has off on Martin Luther King Day, for example, then you have that day as a vacation day as well. Daily attendance is absolutely essential. It's required. Our expectation is that you act as if you were a teacher in the classroom. So you can't be absent unless there is a huge emergency, in which case up to 3 absences with prior communication and documentation may be permitted, and that'll be at the discretion of your professors, Dr. Rybakova, myself, and Dr. Alexander. More than 3 absences will result in a failing grade for student teaching. On this page, you also have information for myself, Dr. Rybakova, and Dr. Alexander, in addition to a course description, and you'll see the remainder of the course description on this page and the objectives, plus the course materials and the technology requirements. So we expect that on your own time, you'll read through and be familiar with all of these details. Starting on page 3, we've listed the main standards for certification of teachers. These will become really important as you're thinking about the objectives of the course, but they'll also be incorporated into the assignments that I'll talk about later on during this flip lesson. Starting on page 4, we have listed our policies and our expectations for student teaching. These are very strict, and so you should pay close attention to any of the ideas or concepts on here. So the first is fingerprinting and background checks. At this point, you should all have your fingerprinting done. The key idea in this policy, though, is that if during your student teaching, any event, action, or behavior occurs that may disqualify you from a sufficient background, it must immediately be reported to the Thomas College supervisor within 24 hours. And that's to keep us updated so that we know what's going on with you. As I mentioned before, our expectation of you is that you are behaving professionally, that you are acting as the teacher in the classroom. So you're expected to conduct yourself in a manner appropriate with the teaching profession at all times, both in the classroom and outside of the classroom. Keep in mind that students may see you out to dinner, students may see you at the grocery store, students may see you on a walk on a Saturday morning. So you need to be aware and you need to be conducting yourself professionally. In addition, within schools, we expect you to behave as the teacher in the classroom. So that means attending all of the scheduled appointments or sessions. So if you have parent-teacher conferences, you must attend those. If there are after-school meetings that your mentor teacher is attending, you must attend those. If there is an emergency that makes you unable to attend those, you need to notify all of the people with enough advance prior to the absence. If any problems arise during your student teaching, make sure that you let both us as your Thomas College supervisors know and any of the school personnel know. We'd like to resolve problems as soon as they occur, so keep us informed and keep us updated. As a student teacher, you do need to respect the confidentiality of all students. So it is generally unprofessional, and it's sometimes illegal to share pupils' progress outside of the classroom, or even to share it with other students in the classroom. So you need to keep students' progress confidential between you, your mentor teacher, and the particular student. At this point, you should know that we expect you to dress professionally. Generally, the rule of thumb is you should dress one step above the common dress of any of the teachers at your school. At this point, now that you've been at your school for about a week, you should have a sense of how teachers dress at the school. Sometimes some schools are a little bit more professional than others. Just keep in mind that you should be dressing one step above. That means nothing too short, nothing too low. Cardigans are great. Slacks, some kind of a high-necked shirt, appropriate but also comfortable shoes are generally a great way to go. If you have dress down days at your school, it is something to be aware of, but it may be in your best interest to continue to dress professionally so that you are looking the part of the teacher. And in addition, people take note of how you dress, particularly as you're on the job market. Within the school, you do need to behave professionally. Children's well-being and learning are always the number one concern within a school. You should always be making decisions based on what's in the best interest of your students. Keep in mind that safety is something to be incredibly aware of, and you should be aware of all of the safety procedures in your classroom and in the school. And in general, number 10, we've included as kind of an all-encompassing idea that you need to demonstrate consistent and ongoing progress toward professional attitudes and behaviors. So we should see you progressing as a professional in the field of education. So on page 5, we started by talking a little bit about the assumption of teaching responsibilities. Towards the end of the syllabus, you'll see that there's a calendar for the suggested takeover, and that course schedule reflects the suggested takeover. So we recommend that you gradually assume responsibilities over the course of your student teaching until you are doing a full takeover. And I'll talk about that when I talk about the course calendar. As in all classes, we expect academic honesty. Acting in any way, even in the smallest degree, that violates the Thomas College Code of Academic Honesty will result in a failing grade for this course. And that's generally a non-negotiable for us. So don't put yourself in a situation where it may look like you are being academically dishonest. When in doubt, contact one of your professors to check in about what your concerns are. Next on the agenda, or next on the syllabus, is the attendance and placement schedule. As I mentioned, in the event of an emergency, up to 3 absences with prior communication and documentation may be permitted, but more than 3 absences will result in a failing grade for student teaching. And then you can see this piece about assignment submissions. They are due Sundays at 11:59 p.m. uploaded to, it says Moodle on here. We're actually going to have you upload it to your Google folder, which we'll talk about during seminar. It cannot be turned in late. Well, it can be turned in late, but it will be a letter grade drop for every 24-hour period that it is late. And late work will not receive feedback unless you explicitly ask for it. One policy we did want to make you aware of is our revision policy. Anything that is turned in on time and demonstrates best faith effort may be revised until you are happy with your level of proficiency on it. So any resubmission that you do, so if you get a piece, if you turn in a piece of work, you get it back, and it's not quite the level of proficiency you were hoping for, you have 1 week to revise it and to turn it back into your professor, to get to increase your score on that particular assignment. As we move down, you probably at this point, many of you have experienced a snow day this week on, I believe it was Wednesday. Some of you experienced a snow day. You're permitted up to 2 school cancellation snow days without being required to make up that time. So at this point, if you've already had 1 snow day, if there's another snow day, that's fine. After that, you'll have to make up that time at the end of your student teaching. And the idea is that you're still getting the amount of student teaching experience that we were hoping for. So if there's more than 2 days during your student teaching, you'll have to make it up at the end. If you have a scheduled observation and the school schedule is adjusted due to snow or due to inclement weather, it's your responsibility to communicate with your Thomas College supervisor. So we need to know what's going on so that we are arriving when your scheduled observation might be. We've also included some policies on ADA requirements, support, and the importance of diversity that I'll let you peruse on your own time. So now I'm going to shift into what are the course requirements. And really, during your student teaching, you're going to need to be focusing on paying attention to these ideas here on your own. They're due at certain times during your student teaching, and it's your responsibility to submit them when they're due. So the first is a professional development plan that you will develop with your mentor teacher, but that you will write on your own. And there's 5 required pieces to it: the schedule of the assumption of teaching responsibilities, specifics of instruction and planning, a schedule for assumption of non-instructional duties, so like recess duty or lunch duty, schedule of formal conferences, and at least 3 professional SMART goals. If you're unfamiliar with SMART goals, you should touch base with myself, Dr. Rybakova, or Dr. Alexander for help with that. And that needs to be due on Sunday, January 22nd, and it should be uploaded to your Google Drive folder. You will also have 2 formal mentor observations that will be based on the main standards for certification of teachers, and those should occur during week 8 and week 16. So we will be in touch with you regarding those observations and the kinds of feedback that your mentor teacher should be providing, but it's your responsibility to set up and schedule those meetings with your mentor teacher and to provide them with the documentation that they need. Those mentor observations, we will also need those observations or the documentation. Similarly, week 8 and week 16, your mentor will do an evaluation. So it's a general evaluation of you. Again, we'll provide you with that formal evaluation, and your mentor teacher will need to submit that back to us and to you. You'll also have 2 supervisor observations, either from myself, Dr. Rybakova, or Dr. Alexander. It is your responsibility for setting up those observations. And you are required to submit a lesson plan to your Thomas College supervisor at least 24 hours prior to your observation. And you should submit that via email. And finally, you have a portfolio that you will need to develop, and it's based on the 11 main standards for teacher certification. So if you go back to the page of the 11 main standards, which is here on page 3, for each of those standards, you will have a different portfolio entry. Each portfolio entry needs to indicate which standard you're addressing. You need to include one artifact of your professional work that you think reflects that standard. So pictures, pamphlets, lesson plans, student work samples, unit plans, thank you letters. And then you need to write a minimum of 1-page single-spaced rationale where you write about how that artifact shows what you know about the identified standard and why that artifact can show what you know, understand, and can perform for that standard. In addition to each of those standards, you also need to include a philosophy statement and a reflection about your experience. So you're going to be doing a self-evaluation using all the assessment and evaluation tools from your mentor teacher and from your supervisors. So the observations, the evaluations along the way, plus the portfolio. And that will be presented during the last day of the seminar. So you should be prepared to submit this portfolio of the 11 standard artifact and rationales, plus the philosophy statement and reflection on the last day of seminar class, both electronically and in person. What you see down below this is this is a breakdown of the points, so you can keep track of where you are in your progress. And then this is a course calendar, which you should be referencing weekly. So you should be referring back to this on a weekly basis to know and make sure that you are on track. If at any point you have questions or concerns about any of the assignments, you should be communicating with us regularly, and you should be communicating with us with enough time so that we can respond to you directly. So that's your quick rundown of your syllabus. We also expect you to be reading through it on your own so that you know all those details and to be sending us questions. Thanks so much. See you later.